I'm Emily Seat. My guest today is Cheryl Kerr with her new novel, See Ya. Welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
This book is very personal. When I was reading it, I could tell you were very involved in it when you wrote it. I'm wondering if it was based on actual experience.
Many of the circumstances are. Losing somebody as suddenly as I lost my father is what kicks this book off. And what that creates for this character in the book, for Manda, is searching for the person that she was trying to bury.
Wow.
And realizing that when her father died, she really didn't know the man he was to many other people.
Mm-hmm. You said, I remember that you described how that happened, a portion of it, and how it affected your main character, which now I understand is you. Would you mind reading that part on page 4?
Somewhere between 1 second and the next, faint breathing becomes final stillness. One moment, breath drawn, and then not another. I do not remember why, but suddenly everyone was gone, and it was just Matthew and me in that cool and silent place. Jenny had gone down the hall with the preacher. I could hear her voice climbing, wound tighter and tighter, refusing the calming words. Matthew, I willed, but no breathing answered my wishes, my prayers for my father on the table. I watched the clock on the wall make its slow way onto each second. I kept thinking that I could make it one more count without screaming, but oh, they were so slow. Tick-tock, tick-tock. In that faraway place that is reality, I thought, so this is it. This is dying. But I really didn't believe. In my sandals and shorts, I kept looking at him, kept wondering just when the soul wafts away. In so visible a person, a character so strongly felt, how could it not be seen when it went on its way?
Wow.
And I did. I stood by the table and wondered, when does the soul and the body, when do they separate? That was an actual moment.
Did you feel it, or?
No, and I think that's why I wondered. And I think that's what created the first big question in this book, is how does somebody that's always been in your world simply go?
Mm-hmm. And you also, I would imagine, understand the finality of death in a way you never had before.
Yes, it's an enormous thing, and you don't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to deal with that somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And my way was to write a book, to find an answer.
But it's about more than your father. Could you tell us a little about Peter?
Peter, this book is about looking for fathers. And the tandem looking in this book is Manda losing her father and looking for who her father was. Peter, on the other end, grew up in Germany thinking his father was dead and discovers late in life, by chance, that his father may not have been so. The story of his father's death truly was part of the confusion and misconception that was all over Europe at the end of World War II, mm-hmm. when so many of the communication methods had been totally destroyed. Peter comes looking for his father, and their parallel journey from opposite ends is what winds through the book.
It does.
Both of them growing and learning who they are and who their fathers were.
Mm-hmm. How did you get the idea of bringing the German whose father had died in World War II into the picture?
We had a visitor at the house,
uh-huh.
which oddly enough, in Texas in May, European people are very proper, and he came wearing an overcoat. Well, in Austin in May, it's probably 95 degrees, and this man was at our door. So many of the circumstances in the book were moments that did not fit, but that they resonated, they stuck out, and I took that. And then we had lived on an Air Force base that had been a German prisoner of war camp during World War II. There were just a lot of little things, and as I began looking for stories, my father was retired Air Force when he passed away. I was just beginning to collect a lot of information, and those facts, it's one of those odd coincidences.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote a story and used the man that came into our front yard. He became Peter.
How neat. How neat. I also noticed that, and it was a little disconcerting, I have to admit, at times, when you used Matthew and Jenny instead of Mom and Dad.
Yes, but I think when you grow up, people did that on the Air Force bases I lived on. And I think that's because there were so many separations. There were so many comments about Don is gone or Matthew is gone, the wives referring to their husbands, or, Bill is on the phone calling. I think that was just the way the kids grew up. I think there's quite a sense of separation between spouses when people are gone for a year or 18 months at a time. Mm-hmm. It's a different culture.
It is. That's true. You were born into a career military family. What was that like?
I was actually born into a civilian family, which is what made the contrast when we became career Air Force quite different. Got to a little bit of both.
What was it like to be a military family?
I think it made me, I was a shy child anyway. Mm-hmm. I think I became even more withdrawn and homesick and quiet, because the Air Force kids, they move every year, every 2 years. They're totally sure of themselves, and they bounce in and they're ready. But when you've lived somewhere a long time and then you're thrown into that, I think that just makes that gulf bigger.
Oh, okay.
It didn't make me more outgoing. It made me more quiet.
I got the impression that you might have on your car the same bumper sticker I would like to have, which says, "I wasn't born in Texas, but I got here as quick as I could." Does Texas really feel like home to you?
I'm a fourth-generation Austinite.
Are you really?
I really am.
Well, no, I didn't get that impression.
Oh.
So you were born in the hill country?
I was, yes.
Wow. Okay. So, see, I had the impression that because you bounced all over the place in the military, but you didn't, evidently, as much as I would have thought you had.
Well, we began here, but then my dad went active duty, and so we spent most of my childhood traveling.
Okay.
So a little bit of each.
A little bit of each, okay. But your husband in the husband in the story has been in Texas forever and ever and ever, practically since Texas was known to be Texas.
Yes.
And he seems so different.
He is. He's very different. And there are families like that. There are people that live on the land grant. My husband's family lives on their land grant from the 1840s.
A land grant?
Mm-hmm. Wow. They are 10th generation Texans from the same place and time. So much of that end of the book also is circumstantially true. Their sense of settledness and connection with the past is much greater, much different than mine. But that contrast does exist in our world, too.
Could you read? I think that contrast is so important. I love your contrast, as a matter of fact.
Thank you.
Could you please read the page 53? I'm sorry, 50 and 51.
50 and 51?
About the relationship between Cameron and Manda.
Surely. Cameron's family sailed into Galveston Bay in 1847 and journeyed north in covered wagons through Indianola, which is no more, and San Antonio, until they settled at Sister Springs early in the next year. They claimed for themselves a limestone-bottomed creek with high cliffs and caves on one side, and cypress, pecan, and oak thick along the other bank. Their family members included stonemasons, a teacher, and several farmers. And that is true. They still have that connection in that place. So,
could you read on?
Yes. The house Benton Dahl lived in was of hewn limestone blocks 18 inches thick, and the floors are beams laid and notched into each other so tightly that no gaps exist even now, 150 years later.
That's amazing to me. Just amazing.
The workmanship is quite amazing in the older homes.
And 18 inches thick.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're cool.
They are, all the time.
Wow. That's great. I was also struck by the fact, as I read the story, that Manda, to me, knew her father better than she might have thought. And there is a comparison she makes between her father and her husband. And that's on the next page, on page 53. Could you it's just a paragraph there. Page 53.
Oh, sorry.
One more.
Matthew thought the sun began its rise because it was 6 a.m. Cameron thought that 6 a.m. would happen, sun or not, and he'd take the day as it came. If dark, Cameron would find a flashlight. If light, he would turn it off. Much more of a person of the moment than Matthew could ever become. That's true. They were very different people, my husband and my father.
I also like that phrase that you had the Cameron say, got a day's work to do.
Got a day to do.
Got a day to do.
Right.
Yes. And that sounds so Texan.
It is. It's very Texan.
But it seems so real, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.